Hello, I'm Robert, and helping you if you're scared of many things as a voluntary fact checker. And we're getting lots and lots of people posting different articles that all spin on this very same story. So, the US is warning intelligence of a potential large-scale attack by Iran's proxies on Israel. And you get variations on the story. It's all from unnamed officials who don't tell us directly. We just hear what the journalists retell to us about what they've heard from unnamed officials. And the clearest statement I saw was a claim that the US is aware of a possibility of using 100 cruise missiles to attack some target in Israel. Now, it's not at all clear that this even is a true story. So we have some speculation down here that, just show that let's see if I can find it. Here we are. So that was the BBC. So first of all, the US it doesn't have the best of intelligence for the Middle East. It's very poor for Afghanistan. It's excellent for Russia, but it does make mistakes in the Middle East. So it's not like it's got a hotline to what the Ayatollah decides. And the system of government is such that they have a single person, the Ayatollah, who is a cleric. He's an Islamic scholar, and he makes the final decision on everything, including their legal system too. And no law can be passed without his permission. And he's basically, it's like a monarch, except he's a religious figure who stays in power for. There's only been two since in Iran. He's the second one. So how can they know what he's decided? With Putin they had remarkable insights, but it seems unlikely to do for the Ayatollah. And then this is the BBC diplomatic correspondent James Landley's summary. It may be a prediction of the future based on hard intelligence, but it might be USA trying to deter Iran by saying, well, look, if you do all this, we're going to claim that you're going to do all this, although we don't really have intelligence that you are. And then by putting that out, then we will talk about what our response would be to all that. It gives a reason to say how they would respond. And so to deter Iran if it was even thinking of doing that. And it could also be to shape expectations so that if Iran does respond in some way, it's sure to be less than this, which is the most extremely unlikely response. And 100 cruise missiles is not such a huge attack anyway. That's similar to their attack on Saudi Arabian oil refinery in 2019. So it's not like a big war thing. That would be the amount they would need to do to try and get through the Iron Dome to hit some military target there to hopefully cause some damage without killing anyone, but causing military harm, damage to the military equipment. That is the sort of an attack they might do if that was their aim. But it seems very unlikely that that is what Iran would do, if we look at all the rest of the context. And this is Michael Singh, and he's from the Washington Institute, and he's often advisor to, I think he's advisor to Congress and things sometimes. Anyway, he said that although a major Iranian attack is possible, it would risk a direct confrontation, and Iran would be at a disadvantage if Iran was directly to attack Israel, and Israel replied back. Then Iran would be at a huge disadvantage relative to Israel. That is why Iran always goes to its proxies. And then it would also take focus off Gaza, which has worked to Iran's strategic gain so far. So all the way through since October the 7th, then Iran has been saying it wants immediate ceasefire in Gaza Strip and a stop to the bombing, and for the only time really in recent times, Iran is on the same side as nearly all the world of wanting to stop, even the United States, of wanting to stop the bombing in Gaza Strip. And it's highly unlikely that Iran will want to change the dynamic, and indeed Iran will see this as a bait by Netanyahu. That if they take this bait, then Netanyahu can then paint Iran as the aggressors and deflect attention away from Gaza Strip. That is the very last thing that Iran wants. Now, we also know that the Ayatollah, I told you he has the last word in everything. The Ayatollah is very much, he does not want escalation. In many times in the past, he has prevented, and remember, he can stop anything. He can stop the military, he can stop the judiciary. He's the head of the military, so he can tell them what to do. He can tell the judiciary what to do. He can tell Congress what to do. He can block any laws that they pass if he doesn't like them. And so, or the parliament, or whatever they call it. So he will not let anything go through if he judges that it has a risk of escalation. So that's been his manner of ruling all along. And then now he's in a situation where it is especially important not to escalate, because he will not want Iran to be seen as the bad guy. He wants the world's focus to be on Israel, to remain very focused on Israel and on the Gaza Strip. So you can see, it just makes no sense for him to do anything like that. And what Michael Singh said in a BBC interview is that he expects there might be some kind of performative retaliation. So Iran does something which is actually quite minor, but Iran will claim that it's done more than it really has. And Israel will say, no, Iran didn't do that. And Iran will say, yes, we did. We managed to do all this, and we destroyed this important bit of military equipment or something, when actually they didn't, or they just scratched it. And then, so that's a quite likely response. And this would leave Israel room to de-escalate, because Israel knows from its side that nothing much happened, and that it will leave Iran to do its retaliation through terrorist attacks against Israel targets, as it has done in the past, and that's been its usual response. And if you remember the Soleimani, when the US killed General Soleimani, and this is the most important general that's been killed in Iran since then Iran responded by precisely destroying a hangar full of fighter jet parts for US fighter jets, and that was the US directly killing an Iranian general. In this case, the US has nothing to do with it. It was Israel that killed the general, and we've got the complication for Iran that Israel there's this big division emerging between the US and Israel, and Iran wants to keep the attention on Israel, and it doesn't want US and Israel to join together against it for the whole world, to start saying, well, look, Iran's the opponent and not Israel, and just to forget about what happened in Gaza Strip and what's happening in Gaza Strip. So that is what all the experts that I've been reading, quite a few different experts, and listening to the interviews, and this is what everyone is saying, apart from this supposed leak by the United States. It just doesn't match what everyone else is saying. So I don't expect any kind of major response from Iran. It makes no sense, and these people are saying they don't expect it. They are cautious. They won't go out and say it's not going to happen, because because they're academics and they're not going to say something like that unless they were really certain. But you can tell that they're very, very skeptical that this is even that this is real intelligence and it would really happen. So that's the situation. So either the US has got its intelligence not very well, not really doing a proper job, or else that US is playing some kind of a game like those three things I suggested. That this that was the BBC's diplomatic correspondent in the Middle East, and I read three suggestions from him. So then I want to go a little bit further and just say that people talking about the possibility of a world war from this. This is absolutely, totally impossible. First of all, people worry about nukes, and Iran does not have nukes. It has nuclear material that is not yet enhanced to weapons grade. Now, if Iran it could even have done this in a secret program, though, or if it was to do it, it could get the gas. It could get enriched uranium hexafluoride gas within a week for a nuke, if it were to prioritize that. But you can't do much with uranium gas, even if it's 90% enriched. And it's a long stage from there to first making all the components for a weapon, then working out how to make it explode as a nuke, and then you won't really know for sure you've got a nuke until you can test it, and it's only after you test it you can start moving to more advanced kind of things. Like that would be a big nuke that could never fit inside a ballistic missile, and it would take about 6 months from where they are now to reach that point. So and then if you go and look at Iran itself, it has always been calling for a nuclear-free Middle East. Few people mention this. Saudi Arabia and Iran have been long-term callers for nuclear-free Middle East because they know that Israel has nukes and it's been hiding the nukes, and it's just pretending. It's not openly declaring its nukes to the world, but everyone knows it's an open secret that France gave Israel nuclear technology so it didn't have to test its nukes. And it's had them for a long time now, for many decades. And the last thing that Iran wants is to develop its nukes. If Iran developed its nukes, then Saudi Arabia would... so Iran is reasonably friendly with Pakistan, but it's not close pals. Saudi Arabia is. And Iran and Saudi Arabia are kind of opposed to each other in many ways, on many things. And Saudi Arabia helped finance the Pakistan nuclear bomb, but it didn't want to develop nukes itself. If Iran was to start this process, of this 6-month process, and it produced its crude nuke, and it's possible it could hide the first 4 months of that, but the US would know about it, and the world would know about it 2 months before, at least 2 months before they got to actually having a nuke, if they were to set out on that path. There's no sign that they've done that. So Iran definitely does not have nukes at present. If it was to get to its first crude nuke, it's got 2 months to get the first crude nuke from knowing for sure that's what they're doing. By then, Saudi Arabia would have much more advanced nukes from based on the technology that it financed in Pakistan. It says it can have a nuke within weeks if it needs to. And that is the very last thing that Iran wants, is to have a nuclear Middle East with Saudi Arabia having nukes, and then Israel would have to openly declare it's got nukes very probably at that point, and then Iran has nukes. And then a nuke is of absolutely no use for attacking. A nuke, if Iran does develop nukes, it's as a deterrent. It's to prevent Israel from attacking Iran. That's the only reason it makes sense for Iran to have a nuke. If Iran was to do a first strike, it's the same for any country that does a first strike. then as soon as a nuclear power does a first strike, it becomes the pariah of the world. All the nuclear powers want to make sure that it's not going to be able to launch any more nukes. It's basically saying to the world, look, I fired a nuke, you've got to stop me, attack me. It's telling the world to attack them. So, and Iran would be very vulnerable, and the US and Israel could easily destroy its nuclear capability from the air with missiles, and there wouldn't be very much that Iran could do. They couldn't invade and take over Iran, but they could easily destroy its nuclear capability from the air. So it makes absolutely no sense for Iran to use a nuke as a first weapon. So I'm saying this because there were these red top tabloids that just make stuff up and they say World War III many times a year. There's no possibility. Iran does not have nukes. It does not have ICBMs either. So this shows the distance that it can fire with its missile systems. And its aim is to cover the Middle East. As you can see, it can cover all the Middle East. And that's all it really cares, or even right up to Egypt on that side, nearly all of Egypt. And so it's basically got the whole of almost the whole Middle East covered, and that's all it cares about. It does not have its ballistic missiles go up above the atmosphere and down again, but they don't go very high up. And an ICBM is a altogether different kind of technology. ICBM means essentially it goes into orbit, then it has to re-enter at orbital speed. Much, much faster. This is a very difficult technology. The difficulty is not getting into orbit. Iran already has satellites. The difficulty is coming back from orbit, and it's easy to come back from orbit with a parachute, like the Apollo astronauts did, but it's much harder to come back with an ICBM that has to enter the atmosphere at very high speed, and it would heat up to very high temperatures. And they have to use very special materials, but otherwise it's just going to melt and burn up as it re-enters. So the first few ICBMs that any country tests, if it doesn't have the technology yet, just burn up as they learn how to build an ICBM properly. And the nuke, how to make a nuke is not open source, and how to make an ICBM is not open source either. These are very secret, top secret in all countries that know how to do it. So Iran is not pals with any country that would give it this technology. Russia certainly wouldn't give that technology to Iran. And China is not at all possible, and Pakistan wouldn't do that. And I'm not sure Pakistan has ICBMs, come to think of it. And Israel certainly won't. Israel is the only one in the Middle East that has ICBMs, and it's been basically gifted a whole lot of technology by its allies, and it's developed its own ICBMs. So you can see from this, first of all, as I say there, and I summarise that, Iran will look for a low-key way to respond. It can't target anywhere far outside the Middle East. It does not have ICBMs. It does not have nukes, and we know that. It would have to test the nukes. That would be something the IAE, I've got details further down. International Atomic Energy Authority, I can't remember what the acronym, what it is, but they the atomic experts who do all the do the inspecting and so on, and they would know 2 months before they could have an actual nuke ready to explode. That section of it can't be hidden, although they could hide some of it earlier on, because they still have some overview of what's happening in Iran, although it's greatly reduced. So that's that. And then I just want to talk about, so it can't start a world war. There's absolutely no possibility. Now, what do they talk about when they say that there's a risk of this escalating, becoming a larger conflict? Well, what's happening is that right now, Israel is bombing Gaza Strip. Hamas in Gaza Strip can only send very feeble missiles which are not guided and are homemade missiles that fire into Israel and do very little damage. And they can't shoot down planes, so Israel can just do low bombing runs over Gaza Strip, pretty much as low as it likes, and drops very precise bombs wherever it wants them to. And it just uses glide bombs. Now, Hezbollah are in Lebanon, which is up here, and they're nowhere near Iran in capability. They're nowhere near, and far from Israel, which is far more technologically advanced compared with Iran, Iran is the most advanced in all the Middle East, apart from Israel. And then way below those we have countries, all the other countries have much less technology than those two. So Lebanon, it's mainly got ancient Russian rockets, that Russian material, either knockoffs that it's managed to get indirectly from Iran, or the actual systems themselves, which came from Russia to Iran. Now, Russia is not supplying Lebanon directly. Russia is not on either side in this war. Russia has close ties with Israel, and it's got close ties with Iran. And it has called for ceasefire all the way through. The large numbers of Russian Jews in Israel. So Russia is not going to come in on this conflict on either side. Nobody is suggesting it would. It is just not possible at all that Russia will have anything to do with this. And they're totally caught up in the Ukraine war. They're not like the Soviet Union. They don't have a big presence in the Middle East. They have some connection with Syria, and they have a kind of commercial connection, a military commercial connection with Iran, which is supplying it with some of the materials it needs for the Ukraine war, but not fighting in the war, and they're not allies. So we've got the situation where Hezbollah has some kind of ex-Russian equipment not supplied directly by Russia. It may have been supplied by the Wagner Group, but that is independent of Russia now, and there's still relics of it, I think, in Syria. So Lebanon is, and it's got lots of Russian equipment from way back, and from back when Russia had a strong presence in Syria, and from further back. So Lebanon, the Hezbollah in Lebanon, they have these air defences, which are Russian equipment, but not being supplied directly by Russia, which can shoot down fighter jets and shoot down bombers. They also have systems which are missile systems, which again Russian models, that either knockoffs from Iran or originally from Russia, but not nearly as many as Syria has. But they have enough to fire tens of thousands of rockets at Israel. So this is the larger war that people want to make sure that, I think you'll be able to see that hopefully. So this is what people mean by the larger war. It's the main possibility of a larger war in the area. But I just compare that with this map up here. I'll show you where Lebanon is, and if I can find it, Lebanon is, let's see, I think it's just there, a little country up there. It's quite hard to see at this scale. It's somewhere up there. It's a little country there, and that's magnified here. There's Israel. You can see Israel, and then you can see Lebanon up there, just a tiny little country. This is Syria and Damascus. Lebanon is just that little bit. So Lebanon it's bigger than the Gaza Strip, and what they're worried about here is a possible somewhat larger war than the Gaza Strip war, where Lebanon can fire back. Most of its missiles would be shot down by Israel's Iron Dome, but a few would get through, and some Israelis might be killed. So this would be a major escalation, and if Israel was to fight and be bombing in Lebanon, and if there's a bit. It's only interesting in a tiny little strip in southern Lebanon. I'm not sure where it is. It's a very small bit down there that Israel is interested in, that the fighting is over. But it might extend to bombing campaign over much of Lebanon, and so that would be an awful escalation. But it would be like the Gaza Strip, but at larger scale and more risk. So, but Hezbollah do not want this to happen. Hezbollah are very cautious, and they're doing very minimal kind of attacks on Israel that mostly don't do anything, but they're just symbolic. Firing lots of bombs, lots of missiles that just get shot down by the Iron Dome, and occasionally they send sorties of soldiers that go over the border into Lebanon, and all of them are killed in these little sorties, and symbolic things like that. So Lebanon is doing very little, and Israel is bombing Lebanon from time to time, and Lebanon is doing symbolic things back to Israel, and that's basically what's happening at the moment. And Hezbollah don't want to do more than that. And Hezbollah has told Iran that they do not want to be involved in responding to the consulate was in Damascus, and Israel, everyone has agreed that it was Israel, though Israel haven't acknowledged it. They fired missiles at Damascus, and this killed the general in the ambassador's home, but they didn't kill the ambassador because he was at work. And they killed 13 people in total in Damascus, including this quite important general. And so people ask, why did Israel do that? It was an obvious escalation. Well, and as I said, one possibility is that it's what they call controlled escalation, a dominant escalation, where Israel felt that there's just no way Iran is going to respond, because any way Iran responds would make things far worse to Iran. So Israel might have felt, well, they do it just because they can. Or it might be that Netanyahu wants to provoke a response of some sort from Iran in order to deflect attention away from Iran, away from Gaza Strip. Either way, Iran is not at all likely to respond directly, and as we've seen, Hezbollah, they don't want to respond. It's not their embassy, and they very much don't want to provoke a war with Israel. So Iran is in a bit of a fix here. It could try a kind of tit-for-tat proportional response of damaging an Israeli embassy. The problem is that there are very few Israeli embassies that it could target that wouldn't cause major problems for Iran, because of the host country that the embassy is in. So they're not. People are now saying they're not likely to target an Israeli embassy. So Iran might do anything. In some ways, Iran benefits the longer that Israel just stews over it. Israel keeps having to have these alerts and nothing happens. Then it relaxes a bit, and then it has more alerts and so on. It's possible that Iran don't do anything. It's possible they do something symbolic in some way, but Hezbollah don't want to get involved. So maybe Syria involved, Houthis, but they'd be very difficult because they're very far away in the south here, and US has destroyers in between to stop them, and then there's the US here, who they can also help protect Israel if necessary, if they start being overwhelmed by Hezbollah. But Hezbollah don't want to be involved. Iran's in Syria are probably not going to want to respond either. So the Iranians are pretty much stuck, that nothing that they do looks like a good option, even for a performative, pretending they've done more than they have, because there's the worry that Israel would respond back again, and then what do they do? So Iran might do nothing. It might do something minor and claim it's major, and nobody is really clear what they're going to do. But this idea of them firing 100 cruise missiles directly at Israel, or indeed ballistic missiles mixed in with it, it just seems very, very improbable. You can't say it's impossible, it's just remotely possible that the US does have actual intelligence, but really everyone I've seen is extremely skeptical. And then if the very worst case, but this just doesn't seem credible at all. So suppose that Iran did fire direct, and you see it's not got any border with Israel, it's a long way away. That's why it uses its proxies for two reasons, because it's not got very good, it's got asymmetrical responses. It's good. It's got quite a good deterrent. If Israel was to attack Iran, then Iran could probably shoot down some of the fighter jets, and it can fire ballistic missiles at Israel, and be a very difficult country for Israel to invade. But Iran, it's just got nobody. It could try and attack Israel through Syria, but it's not very easy. It could try and involve the Houthis, and it works through, but they're very far away, and mainly it works through Hezbollah, is the main way that it tries to attack Israel very ineffectively. And sometimes some of the Golan Heights from Syria, but I think, if I remember right, but Iran can't attack Israel directly, because if it fires some missiles at Israel, then Israel has far better capabilities to fire missiles back at Iran, and could cause far more damage to Iran. And nearly everything that Iran fires at Israel, it's got this Iron Dome to cope with, especially for cruise missiles. So it's so if you had a big war, so could you have a big war involving Israel and Iran? It's kind of skeptical. They probably, they do exchange from time to time with long delays between, as they try to de-escalate and try to, they not doing tit for tat quickly, but stopping and deliberating, and that's much more what you'd expect. And there's no way that the United States is going to go and start an invasion of Iran like it did with Iraq, or like even the interventions in Syria, or like it did in Libya. It's not going to do anything like that with Iran. If it were to try, that would be a second Vietnam. It wouldn't be a world war. It would, if the United States was to try invading Iran, it simply wouldn't succeed. We see how difficult it is for Israel to take over Gaza Strip. It'd be far, far, far worse to try and take over Iran, which has got very fortified, lots of caves, high mountains, very wide deserts. It's a huge, huge country. Look how its size it compares with quite large part of Europe in size. And so there's no way that the United States is going to start a second Vietnam War with Iran. Neither Iran doesn't want it, and the United States doesn't want it. There's no possibility of a world war. So going right up to the very, very worst, it's a Vietnam War. Nobody wants that. And that's just not going to happen. Then some tit for tat, that's extremely unlikely. So the main risk is the Hezbollah war that I talked about. And Hezbollah just don't want to get involved in that. So it's really, people talk about the possibility of regional escalation, and it's not likely that Syria gets involved in a major escalation. And people talk about possibly attacking Jordan, and there's this rumour that passed by that Iraq has supposedly supplied millions of tons of explosives to Jordan. Both Iraq and Jordan deny that and say there's no way they could have missed millions of tons going over the border into Jordan. Neither Iraq nor Jordan could have missed something like that. So no, there's no way that Iran is using proxies to attack Jordan, and Jordan had nothing to do with the attack on the embassy anyway, so it doesn't make sense. And that would be a major escalation. And so no, that's not credible at all. And the US is involved in defending Jordan, and Iran doesn't want to attack the US. So that doesn't seem a credible rumour. There was one other rumour, which was that Iran is apparently is supposed to have told the US that it will not attack Israel as long as Israel does an immediate ceasefire. But others said that Iran didn't say that. That was just one rumour from one Arabic source. But it's not impossible that dialogue of similar nature to that has been going on between Iran and US behind the scenes. And for sure, the US will be doing all it can to persuade Iran to do nothing at all. And then Iran from its side will be quite pleased to be persuaded in a way, as long as it can maintain its status, as it were, in the dialogue. And Iran is not really that bothered about what the US and Israel think about it. It's much more concerned about what Hezbollah and Syria and Iraq and its allies think about what's going on and about how tough it is. But in the current situation, it's got the moral ascendancy, it's got the military, its military ascendancy is to do nothing really, or to do the absolute minimum that it feels it needs to do. So that's what the people I'm reading are saying. That the US, what the US has said, doesn't fit with that very well at all. So I personally, it seems extremely unlikely that again, the academics don't want to say it's impossible, but it's extremely unlikely and very, very hard to see how it will make any sense and fit with anything else that anyone else has said for this US intelligence to be correct. So there seems to be some spin or some misunderstanding or some mistake or some other objective that US has in saying these things. So hopefully that helps you all to be a bit less scared. So the takeaway from this is no possibility of a world war, and no possibility, and it seems beyond incredible, there's no possibility really of a Vietnam-style war. That's not going to happen. Biden isn't going to be involved in starting a new Vietnam in Iran. That makes no sense. Neither the US nor Iran can even start a world war here, because nobody except Israel and the US has the capability to fight a world war. And Russia's not going to get involved. Nobody else. China isn't. Nobody. Pakistan isn't. None of them are. So that is totally impossible. The Vietnam is just beyond incredible. The Hezbollah one, then and Lebanon, then Hezbollah just doesn't want that at all. Iran doesn't want any risk of escalation either, and it seems unlikely that Hezbollah will do even minor kind of attack on Israel. It just seems to be completely out of this. It doesn't want to be involved at all. So, and it's extremely unlikely that Iran directly attacks Israel. And so it'd be very much like with General Soleimani, when Iran just symbolically attacked this hangar full of fighter parts, but it will not be anything to do with the US. That's extremely unlikely, and it will try and find something symbolic it can do that's connected with Israel. If it can't do that, it'll do nothing. So it's not going to do anything that risks an escalation, because we see that over and over again. The Ayatollah says the last word, and he just doesn't want any risk of escalation, and especially not right now. So anyway, so hopefully that helps some of you to be a bit less scared of all this and see the wider context. And then with the background of what I've explained here, and you can read my article, follow the sources, then you have quite a lot of information that you can use to detect spin in the articles you read. If you read articles that don't mention these things that I've mentioned, then it's spin. And you then start thinking, oh, it's people who just don't know what they're talking about. And you just start thinking, what? Then you immediately start thinking, if you are someone who detects spin quite quickly, then you just immediately. And so I detect spin all the time in all the articles about both Iran and Ukraine war. You just go and look and say, that first paragraph, it's spin, because you know all sorts of things, because you've been following it in detail, that they've left out. And if it's an expert, they must have done that deliberately. So therefore it's spin. If they're not an expert, then they don't know. You say, why have they only mentioned these things and not mentioned these very obvious things that everyone knows has been following the ball, and which would completely change the outcome of their argument if they were to mention those things. When you see an article like that, it's spin, and so you just then start saying, why are they spinning? Why are they getting us to believe a conclusion that they know by leaving out all the evidence that would lead us to say that conclusion is impossible. And when you read an article like that, you say spin, 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 and there's so much spin going on at the moment, both about Ukraine because of the probably largely because of the Ukraine bill in the House of Congress, in Congress in the USA, and right now in Israel, a huge amount of spin going on here in most of the articles that I read, and so you've got to be a little bit careful and then look and see, and then try and look for somewhat independent experts and people who've got to who are looking at it in who don't have any stake in it, and those are the best ones. So the United States has a huge stake in this, so they're not the most reliable source on this, unless you had a history of them knowing that they're accurate. So with Russia, we have a history in the Ukraine war that the US both knows a lot about Russia, it's got very good intelligence, and it has been openly sharing, not very unusually, lots of information about Russia, and it's important for the US to make sure that not to share false information, so it becomes clear that it is actually sharing what it knows about Russia. But it's not doing that same thing with Iran, and so it's a very different situation, and so I think it's involved in a different game here, and it doesn't read like straight intelligence at all. Anyway, so hopefully that you are got helped a lot. Hopefully this helped with your fear and helped you to detect some of the spin that's going on. And I'll stop this video and upload it to YouTube.